Hi friends, Starry gardening tip. And I was actually walking on the greenway right now, and this is a perfect spot to stop and talk about permaculture. If you've watched any of my videos from the homestead, you will know that not only did we do the Back to Eden garden method, but I incorporated permaculture. And you may be asking, what's permaculture? And just for me, I won't get into the special description of permaculture and look it up. But what I will say is it's just working with nature, with the piece of land that you have. And I'm looking at this, they've done some really great landscaping. But I want to point out some things that really lend to permaculture. The use of rock, the use of the natural environment, the trees, the use of flowers, the use of all different types of vegetation, so that you can actually work with the piece of land that you have. Just about landscaping. It is about producing an environment that is going to bring in the bees and the butterflies and the birds, and that's all good. And it's also about using the natural resources that surround you. Here, I mean, this is all concrete. Look at this. But in a way, they landscaped it. That is usable. And they could do so much more with this space. But this is just an example. But you can take a space like this and create an edible forest. You can create a space that actually is an ecosystem that supports itself year after year after year, and it works synergistically with the surrounding, whatever surrounds your home. If you're butted up to a forest like this, that's great, because what more of a way to incorporate a permaculture, because you're right there with nature and you can bring it into your living space. And that's the awesome thing about permaculture. Really lend to permaculture. The use of rock, the use of the natural environment, the trees, the use of flowers, the use of all different types of vegetation, so that you can actually work with the piece of land that you have. We had a lot of rock, and we landscaped. We did terracing like this too on our piece of property, and the reason being is because of the erosion. So wherever there was erosion, I planted. But what I planted were flowers that would bring in the bees and the butterflies. I planted flowers that were medicinal in purpose. And then, utilizing the rock. Rock has minerals. Rock retains heat. Rock brings in moisture. So it actually helps the soil. Planting different types of fruit trees, berries. There's just so much you can do with a piece of land. And if you look at this, this little square, what do you call it? This little piece of property right here, permaculture, just utilizing what you have and creating that space so that you can use it for edible landscaping. You can use it for medicinal purposes. So don't forget that it's not just about gardening, but it's about creating a space on your piece of property that is going to work with nature. And we forget about it because we want to bring in the bees and the bugs, and we want to bring in, we want to use the water, we want to use the rocks, we want to use the trees, we want to use all of that. And I really believe that as gardenings go, we get so focused on the garden producing food, that we forget that we need to produce an environment that's going to be conducive and help the garden. And what is conducive with us Americans is we want to landscape everything. And the problem with landscaping is we landscape nature right out of our lives. We landscape nature right out of our lives. We have lawns, and then we plant our pretty flowers, and we plant our pretty bushes, and we landscape out what God intended us to live in, which is nature. We were created in the Garden of Eden. So that's the other thing that you also have to keep in the back of your mind. Look at your surroundings, no matter where you're at, even if you're in an urban environment. Don't landscape nature out of your life. And don't just focus on just planting that garden plot. It's so much more. And that's what I'm trying to educate people. Because it seems like we just section off that little plot of square footage for a garden, and then we miss the big picture, which is nature. Because, if you have a garden, then you're cutting your lawn. Oh, that doesn't make any sense. At least for me, it doesn't make any sense. You have a lawn and you have a garden. There's something wrong with this picture. That's the Starry 101 gardening tip for today. Look up permaculture, do a little research, and see what type of permaculture you can implement in your space.